So research shows that up to 4% of inmates are actually innocent. So in the state of Idaho, we have more than 8,000 inmates. That means there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of innocent people that are in jail right now for a crime they didn't do. And given an imperfect storm, anyone could be wrongfully convicted.
Spending years, decades in prison for a crime they didn't commit. For many of us, that's unimaginable, but for some, that's a reality. News Channel 7's Shira Matuzawa looked into what life is like after being wrongfully convicted.
48 years, 5 months, 13 days.
That's how long Glenn Ray Simmons spent in prison for a crime he didn't commit. 48 years, most of his life.
It was hell. Absolutely, it was hell.
Glenn was 21 years old when he was convicted of murder nearly 50 years ago.
I was released July the 27th. My case the conviction was vacated due to a lack of evidence, suppression of evidence and everything. But I got locked up in 1975 on a murder case that I didn't commit in a town that I had never been to.
The Oklahoma City man was even on death row.
You couldn't imagine. I couldn't even describe it. You die 1,000 times on death row before they pull the switch, every day. And so, it was a lot of trauma and stuff.
The University of Michigan's National Registry of Exonerations found more than 3,300 wrongfully convicted people have been exonerated in the U.S. since 1989.
We see a lot of tragedy when people get out. We see a lot of success.
Something Dr. Greg Hampikian, the co-director of the Idaho Innocence Project and professor of biology at Boise State University, has spent decades working on.
The easy part is the DNA. The very difficult part is getting the calls from people while they're in prison, and then dealing with the families sometimes who we come to love and know, and sometimes they pass on while their loved one's in prison, even when we get someone out.
He says at the Idaho Innocence Project, the process starts with a stack of letters, which legal advisors and volunteers go through. Jamie Ellsworth oversees the legal side of the cases at the Idaho Innocence Project.
So I oversee it from the moment we receive a letter up until we go to litigation to try to get a court to overturn a verdict and release an inmate.
She says there's certain criteria they look for in these letters. Things like, did the crime happen in Idaho? And the person must be claiming innocence. They're also looking at the length of the prison sentence. From there, the Idaho Innocence Project sends a questionnaire.
This is really just to get a lot more information about their trial, where they think things went wrong, what they see as a basis for their innocence.
The Idaho Innocence Project will then round up all of the trial documents, and investigators will look and see if they can find anything no one else found.
And then we will either reject or accept somebody. Once we accept them, then we formally start looking for any avenues to get them out of prison.
Jamie says often in wrongful conviction cases, the biggest factor is misidentification.
A lot of people think our brains work like cameras, like the camera that records, and we can just hit pause and rewind and replay our memory. But science has routinely shown that our brain doesn't work like that. It's really much more like a collage, and we piece together little bits and pieces of information, but we have a lot of blank spaces.
False confessions are another big factor.
At the end of the day, you mostly have to show that the jury would have had a reasonable doubt in their mind, or the outcome would have been different.
Christopher Tapp was among those who Hampikian and the Idaho Innocence Project helped. The Idaho Falls man was wrongfully convicted in 1997 for the rape and murder of then 18-year-old Angie Dodge. Tapp spent 20 years in prison until the Idaho Innocence Project helped prove his innocence in 2017.
That was one of the most satisfying days of my life, I think. It's over. There's nothing else I could do.
Hampikian says they worked on the case for 10 years before Tapp was able to get out of prison. But then it was another 5 years before they finished the case and found the person behind the murder.
What all the exonerees want is just finish the story.
After 6 years of freedom, Tapp died at the age of 47 after an accident in Las Vegas last week. And while those who knew him are still grieving, his impact will forever be felt.
It was with the help of Chris Tapp that helped get legislation passed where previously convicted inmates who were wrongly convicted can receive a certain amount for every year they were wrongfully convicted.
She says that amount is $62,000.
We're very happy with that number. A lot of people ask, would you be willing to go to prison for $62,000 a year? But it's better than nothing.
Tapp received an $11.7 million settlement with the city of Idaho Falls after he was wrongfully convicted. It's cases like Tapp's that are documented with the National Registry of Exonerations.
We like to say we are a living archive of injustice.
Ken Otterberg is a researcher with the registry.
Over time, what we've been able to do is show that what people think are anecdotal problems that lead to wrongful convictions are really quite, there's patterns that evolve that you can show.
He adds when people are exonerated, they often use the registry as a resource.
There was a person who was having trouble getting like a driver's license or some sort of state ID, and they pulled up their page to show the clerk who they were. So they're, it's something they can show their friends and their family, and it's a validation of what they went through.
Because the only people who can understand what an exoneree went through are other exonerees.
I don't know what it's like to hear that door slam shut, to be body cavity searched, have the door slam shut, and everybody's been told you're a sex offender, and you didn't do anything. And for the people who get out, it ain't like the movies. The movies have music. We don't have music in lab. They don't have music when they're alone at night. And every single one of the people that I've worked with who get out have horrible nightmares. They are absolutely traumatized by their time in prison.
As for Glenn, he's now working on rebuilding his life.
It's a struggle. I'm still struggling with it. I mean, it's gonna take a while for to get real justice. They just come out with microwaves when I come in. Yeah, that's a whole new thing. It wasn't no cell phones and all of that. Everything had changed. Your car talking to you and all of that. All this stuff is new to me, but I'm excited about it. I mean, I don't make big like a fairy tale. It's hard, but I done adjusted some real hard stuff over the years, so this is not, the worst of all possible world. This is the best of me.
And he's making up for the 48 years he lost.
I want to be known for more than the guy who done 48 years and was released. That's not all of me. That's what happened to me, but that's not who I am.
And Glenn tells me he's grateful to those who have supported him, and he'd like to dedicate his life to prison reform. He says once he's reestablished, he'd like to start a reintegration program to help those who are in his same situation. Now, he has a GoFundMe to help him get reestablished. We'll have a link to it at ktvb.com. In the meantime, the Idaho Innocence Project is always looking for volunteers and donations to help them with the work they do, and we'll have more information as well at ktvb.com.